Afternoon. I'm Jennifer Schenker, editor-in-chief of the INNOVATOR. It's a print magazine and weekly newsletter about digital transformation. You can pick up a copy on your way out. I'm very pleased to be here this afternoon to moderate a session about hacking food. The way we produce and distribute food is hugely inefficient. Every day, tons of food are thrown away, and over 800 million people around the world remain hungry. And this despite all of the advances that we've made in technology. So with me here today are three incredible entrepreneurs who will each share with us about their innovation in solving this very serious worldwide problem. Each one will give us a quick overview, and then we'll immediately follow with an interactive discussion. And so let's start with you, Osnat, please. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Osnat. Nice to meet you all. I'm the CMO and one of the co-founders of INFARM, a company with a very ambitious mission to help cities become self-sufficient in the food production. I'm sure lots of you here are dealing with the very burning question of how to feed 9 billion people by 2020. We at INFARM decided to focus on what we think is the biggest deficiency of our current food system, and that is the fact that it is far, far removed from the people it is trying to feed. We're wasting incredible amounts of money, energy, and manpower to bring food from farms into the cities. 50% is wasted before it arrives to a plate. And the food that survived this journey lacks freshness, nutrients, and taste. So, at INFARM, we decided to redesign the entire chain of supply from end to end. Instead of building big farms outside of the city, optimizing on one crop and then distributing the produce, we are actually distributing our farms throughout the cities, directly where people live and eat. We operate a farming network in Berlin in places such as supermarkets, restaurants, warehouses, and distribution centers. Our farms, when designing and developing our farms, we actually take inspiration from nature's techniques. For example, our growing trays are inspired by the beautiful arrangement of the sunflower seeds. This enables us to use space in the most efficient way possible, and also to have a daily harvest. Each of our farms is its own micro ecosystem, with growing recipes that tailor light spectrums and intensity, pH, nutrients, and so on to ensure the maximum natural potential of each plant. No matter if it is a mint from Peru or ice plant from the sandy beaches of the Mediterranean. This is how we can actually bring a world of flavor, biodiversity, into your neighborhood, basically. This year, we're gonna be launching our first farm in Paris in the next 3 months. It is a 100 square meter farm that will produce more than 4.5 tons a year, actually enabling this particular supermarket chain to become self-sufficient in their herb production. We are very proud to grow produce that is highly appreciated by high-end chefs and to be able to sell it in affordable prices to everyone in the supermarkets. So I would like to finish with showing you a short video from a very special chef that owns 2 Michelin stars. His restaurant is listed at the top 50 in the world, and he joined the urban farming revolution. This is Tim Raue from Berlin.
The restaurant Tim Raue is based on the idea of 3 different cuisines. It's the flavor world of Thailand. It's the techniques of Cantonese cooking, so the old heritage cooking in China. And it's the purism of Japan. That means that we try to reduce the plate unless there is no more thing I can put away. Even herbs and cress and plants is nothing where we do a garnishing with. This makes it so important to us that these herbs are really intense in the way they are. The first time I met INFARM was at one of the metro warehouses, and the taste, the flavor was amazing. It was as clear as you have a laser sword. So focused, so concentrated, and so pure, and I loved it. So in our INFARM farming station, we harvest sometimes a minute before we serve, and that is a difference of taste. Maybe it's just 3 or 5%, but if you're on the top of your game, 3 or 5% is making the difference on the palate from outstanding to wow, 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 yippee, oh, yippee.
Thank you, Osnat.
you.
I'm looking forward to exploring a little bit more about the company after we finish the other presentations. So let's move now to Nicole, and let's hear about what you're doing in Cologne, Germany.
Yes, so hello, my name is Nicole, and as Osnat was saying, in Germany and throughout the whole world, we waste lots of food, really, really good food. So I really wanted to do something against all this food waste. And what we did is we founded a shop where we can only sell food that otherwise would have been thrown out. So, oh, these are different slides. Ah, okay. So this is me at the shop. We have a shop in Cologne, Germany, and what we do is we go out onto the fields and we harvest all the fruit and vegetables that the farmer already knows he won't be able to sell to the normal supermarkets because they have grown too small or too big, and you know, as Osnat was saying, nearly half of their harvest is not being eaten. So that's every second potato that's actually going to waste. And so we go out to the farms, we collect those potatoes, and not only potatoes, but also all the other fruit and vegetables. We bring it to the shop, and there everyone can pay whatever they want for the produce, or how we say, whatever it's worth to them. And in that way, we raise a lot of awareness about food waste, and we tackle food waste because we bring it back to the consuming cycle. So let's see. Oh, so this is the other shop, the second one. We not only have fruit and vegetables, but we also have products that have run out of date. And yes, you are allowed to sell that if you inform the customers that they have run out of date. And that way, we bring back lots of food back to the cycle, and we tackle food waste. As you know, like lots of drinks, and like we have coconut water and beer or rice and pasta. It's really nonsense that we throw all this good produce into the trash. So with that shop, we actually do something against food waste. We have lots of cooperation partners. These are farms or producers. And I think that's the end of my slides. I'm a bit confused. But
Thank you, Nicole.
Yes.
So now, Hila, let's turn to you.
Okay. The clicker? Oh, thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Hila, and I'm from the United Nations World Food Program Innovation Accelerator. We're a global accelerator, but we're actually, our key structure is based in Munich, Germany. So what is the World Food Program? We are one of the biggest United Nations agencies in the world, one of the largest humanitarian actors. On a yearly basis, we feed between 80 and 100 million people around the world that have been affected by diverse shocks, whether it's a climate change shock or a conflict. We have very strong logistics capabilities on a daily basis. We manage a fleet of 5,000 trucks, 20 ships, and 70 airplanes moving humanitarian goods, but also humanitarian workers. We also are moving more and more into, you would traditionally think that we would just distribute food, but we're also moving more and more into digital solutions where we can provide food and a monthly budget that people can go to and buy at a local supermarket. So what's WFP's Innovation Accelerator? So we run like any accelerator. We have a full-fledged program, so you can apply to us on our website if you have an innovation that tackles diverse topics that can help end hunger. So if you're a supply chain startup, an ag tech, food tech, AI, blockchain, and you think your solution can be relevant for developing countries, you can apply on our website. We run boot camps. We've run those together with Singularity University and also with XPRIZE, but we also run them ourselves. And the great thing for startups is that we'll also give funding for you to run a pilot in a developing country with us. So that's part of our, let's say, program. Just to give you a few examples of our work, we're supporting the digitalization of the Farm to Market Alliance, which is an alliance of a number of companies like Syngenta, Rabobank, and ourselves to give a whole holistic solution to smallholder farmers around the world. Just as a statistic, most of the hungry people on the planet are actually smallholder farmers. So 500 out of the 800 million people that you mentioned, Jennifer, are actually smallholder farmers. So there's a lot of potential to help them to farm better. Another example, and this relates to Osnat, we're looking at hydroponics from a different angle. We're testing it in very tough locations. So this is an example from the Sahel Desert where we're supporting the Sahrawi refugees. We start with sometimes very high-tech solutions, and sometimes we go even a bit lower tech, and I can share more about that later. And also we're dealing with another element that connects to Nicole, which is food waste. And that's about post-harvest loss. Many times farmers can harvest, but on the way to your plate, we lose a lot of food. So we also help them in ways to manage the way they save their food after it's harvested. So yeah, so I'm from the WP Innovation Accelerator, and yeah, I'm happy to speak more with Jennifer and hear your questions as well.
Thank you, Hila. You can
sorry.
keep the mic.
Oh, never mind.
So what I think is interesting here is that we see a range of solutions. So in the case of Nicole, there's really no tech involved. It's just, common sense. Why leave food that looks imperfect, but is perfectly good to eat, rot? And just by organizing, you can really make a big difference in reducing food waste. But then we turn to Osnat, and you are using artificial intelligence and all kinds of technologies to provide farming as a service. So can you explain to us a little bit about how the tech comes into play?
Yeah, so basically we are monitoring all of our farms, our distributed farms. It's basically one farm that is distributed. We are monitoring all of them at all time, ensuring that the plants get the best care as they grow, but also connecting with our clients sales number, for example, to really optimize the production according to the demand. And by that, to eliminate waste and grow exactly what needed.
So already today, you can walk into certain German supermarkets and you can, just pick a living plant that has been grown in the middle of the supermarket.
Yeah.
And you use, if I understand correctly, you use the artificial intelligence, you adjust it to recreate the soil conditions of where these herbs would normally grow in other countries.
The entire ecosystem, how the French people say terroir. So it's the intensity of the light and the spectrum of the light, but also it's lots of very complex biological components that create a real natural environment.
So let me turn now to Hila, because you're also doing, as you mentioned, hydroponic farming, but you are doing it in the developing world where the cost of using some of the latest technologies and infrastructure is just too high to scale and be practical. So tell us a little bit about how you adjust.
So I'll take the example of the hydroponics project that I showed you from the Sawaris in the Sahel Desert. So in the beginning, we brought a big old shipping container with a solar panel, LED lighting. It had shelves, and we realized that this solution is very effective, but it's not scalable. You will not probably bring 100 shipping containers into the desert. So we adapted the solution, trying to find local equipment and creating a mini hydroponic system. It has 60% of the capacity as the very high-tech one, but it gives you a very high capacity, which is super important. And you use natural lighting instead of LED lighting. You buy the equipment locally instead of shipping it from far away. And you also talk a lot to the users, and I think this is something with any innovation, regardless where you're doing it, you need to talk to the local community, see what their needs are, see how you develop it. So any technology can be relevant for developing countries, but you need to check, again, as you mentioned, the infrastructure, the cost, but also is it the right solution for the local community? And that's what we try to do when we work with startups, to help them look into their innovation and see how it needs to be adapted or changed.
Okay, so let's move back to Europe for a moment and talk about Nicole. You have your shops in Cologne, but I think you would like to see this happen in other parts of Europe as well. So, what would you say to people here about getting such a project started?
Well, I think a shop like we have in Cologne is possible nearly in every big city. The advice I can give from my own experience is to start from the bottom up. Like, we started with nothing, only with the wish to do something against food waste. So in the beginning, I borrowed my auntie's car and we drove out to the farms and we collected lots of fruit and vegetables. And then we drove back to Cologne and we put up a table and then we presented all the nice fruit and vegetables, and people were amazed. They said, this is something the normal supermarkets won't sell? And we said, yes, it would have been gone to waste if we wouldn't have collected it. So with a really minimal financial background, we got this thing started. And we realized lots of people came to our market stalls. And we thought, well, if it's that lots of people want to come, we should do this more often. So not only once a week, but maybe we rent a pop-up store. So what we did is for 2 months, we rented a pop-up store, and we noticed even more people came and even more, produce was being rescued. And we realized, okay, this seems to be a really, really good thing, because people are really interested in doing something against food waste. No one wants to waste food, but not the farmers, not we as customers. The only problem is what can I do as a normal customer who has a different, who has a life as well and who goes to work. So we needed a solution which is easy for you to come and shop. And by defining the price as you want it, you get to think about where does the food come from, and you might do something against food waste in your own families as well. So I'm hoping that by starting small, it makes the barrier to actually do something against food waste very small. So I'm hoping to inspire many people to do something like we do. And in the end, now we have a shop and we're thinking of expanding. So yes, it's grown heaps.
Thanks, Nicole. And Osnat, so you are expanding. Maybe just explain a little bit about how many stores you're in Germany, what you're doing and going to do in France is different, and what else you'd like to do in Europe.
So we're operating now more than 50 farms in Berlin alone. We're going to expand to other German cities this year, but also to 3 more European capitals, which is Paris, London, and Copenhagen. And the rest of the question was?
Yeah, I mean, basically just I asked what the difference was with what you're doing in Paris, because this is a first, right?
Yeah. The interesting thing is that we can become really local. That means that we not only produce locally, but we can produce according to the demographics and the wishes not in just any city that we farm, but even in every neighborhood. So because our plants are not going into transportation or refrigeration, we are actually able to reintroduce a lot of diversity that are too gentle to survive any supply chain. And that creates so much diversity, so much different varieties that we taste on a daily basis, and are optimized according to the different markets we operate in.
Okay, and just as a point of information, so Nicole's project is not for profit, but Osnat is for profit, and you have raised venture capital. So
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so let's now talk about the World Food Programme's Accelerator and how you're working with startups and some of the solutions that they've developed for the developing world.
So in terms of working with startups, this was our idea from almost day one, to create an accelerator where we can bring our field know-how and share it with startups. Because many European startups, whether in France, I don't know, in the Netherlands, or even from the US, or even African startups, wherever they are, they have a commercial solution, but they don't know how it can solve problems for organizations like ours. So we wanted to build that bridge through our accelerator. So when we select teams, we look at solutions that can solve our problems. When they come to our boot camps, we bring experts from our organization, so people who are experts in humanitarian nutrition or supply chain, but we'll also bring experts from the private sector, someone to help you with your marketing or your strategy. So we really want to give this whole solution for the startups. And that's also why we want to give them funding to go to the field and test it. Because it's one thing to have an idea on paper and to bring it to a different location than where you usually do it. The implementation is a totally different story, and that's why we run pilots, because we want to see how these things develop in reality. In terms of diverse examples that we've had, we're working with a Dutch startup that is doing some vegetation solution in Colombia. But we have this project called Building Blocks, which is our blockchain solution in Jordan. One of the biggest implementations of blockchain in our realm of work. And we actually talk to a lot of startups out there that I assume from the blockchain, let's say, world, and I don't think they expected us to be a potential client of theirs. So I think that's also an interesting realm. I think also for startups that don't think that they're a food tech startup, they could be a potential startup that we'd be interested to work with.
Right, because part of this whole food chain thing has to do with getting the money to the right people at the right place at the right time. So there's a fintech element to all of this where blockchain works very well.
I think the interesting thing about the food realm and innovation is that there's so many steps. So you can find a solution for diverse steps in the process. So it's just a matter of what interests you and what you think you can solve. But there are so many things that can be solved.
Okay. So can you talk a little bit more about some of the ways that you are working with startups, like with the small stakes farmers that you mentioned earlier?
So what we do as in terms of our program is when first is a selection, then we invite them to our boot camps. And in the boot camp is a great way for us to get to know startups because you want to see what they're thinking about, what their plans are. And then when we fund them, we really need to find a country office for one of our operations in the 80 countries where we operate to us where they can test the innovation. So we've done this in Tanzania. We've brought startups there to test their innovation on the ground. And you learn a lot of things by doing. So it's really global, and that's the key message for me also here. It doesn't matter where you're from. You can, if that's part of your strategy, you can bring your innovation to end hunger almost anywhere. It's just finding the right program for you, and potentially it could be working with us.
Okay, great. So Osnat, do you want to leave the audience with a message about the future of farming as a service?
Yeah, and I also see the questions here. So maybe adding to what Hila said, I think one of the biggest challenges of a startup is after you actually have a good innovation and even a proof of concept is really finding the right business model to spread your word and to spread your product. With us, so I think you're doing an amazing thing, and I think it's really just by trying different models, different concepts, also like Nicole's, you can actually find your way and see where you can put the most impact. So for us, the first farm we put in a supermarket was more of a bold thing to do, to show people that food can grow as close as possible to where they actually consume it. But we actually, this actually became our main business model. And someone is asking me here about the prices, and I can say that we sell the produce not in premium prices, although it's completely pesticide-free and sustainably grown. We put a lot of effort to actually create a viable, economical business model that will allow us to sell great, better food in affordable prices for everybody.
You had mentioned to me earlier that the supermarkets are able to sell these freshly grown herbs at the same price point as the packaged goods.
The packaged cutted herbs that they sell. Yeah.
Okay, great. So with that, I'm going to ask you all to give a big round of applause for three terrific women entrepreneurs.